Fallout New Vegas has weapons. Yep, that's a solid intro right there. Fallout New Vegas has a lot of weapons, so many in fact, I feel like I learn about a new one every week. Take the Compliance Regulator, for example. I had seen the name mentioned before in comments, but just assumed it was some unique gun that people wanted me to show off because it's their favourite. Well, after looking into it, I can confirm it is certainly one of the most interesting firearms in the entirety of the game. While it seems to be just a funky laser pistol, in actuality it is a one-of-a-kind paralysation beam. Essentially, if it manages to land a critical hit on an enemy, it will completely stun them for 10 full seconds, allowing you to wail on them while they lie there motionless. The trade-off is that the gun itself doesn't do much damage, so typically you'd want to use it to temporarily shut down a tough opponent, and then switch to something stronger to take them out easily. So, naturally, today I am not going to do that and see if you can beat New Vegas with solely the Compliance Regulator. Rules are simple enough, same as all the other weapon restricted runs. I can only use the Compliance Regulator, meaning I will be defenseless until I obtain it. Considering the weapon is only found in the Honest Hearts DLC, I've got a bit of walking to do before we get there. Now, with all that out of the way, let's begin. As the Regulator is basically a ranged equivalent of the Volendrung from Oblivion, I named myself Malakath as I thought that would be fitting. When it comes to deciding on a build, it's all in on crit chance as nothing else matters. The only way to offset the weapon's pitiful damage is to make sure I keep landing crits so that whoever I am attacking never even gets a chance to fight back while I slowly whittle them down. To that end, max lock off rip, then high agility for some specific perks, as well as the fact it gives us more AP to work with in VATS, and VATS itself offers a small crit chance boost. The rest of the points go to endurance for more health and intelligence for more skill points. Tag skills are science, energy weapons, and repair. Energy weapons for a tad more damage, science will allow us to create more ammo for the gun at workbenches, and repair is to help us fix the thing because I have a feeling the durability is going to be awful, as that is the norm with these types of special weapons. Finally for traits, built to destroy for, you guessed it, more crit chance, and then skilled because you are literally just making things harder on yourself if you don't take it. I drop all the pre-order slop, then get to looting Doc's house. I find some energy cells as well as a basic laser pistol, which will come in handy for repairs. Now, nothing is stopping me from running straight to the DLC entrance right away and grabbing the Regulator in the next 5 minutes. That said, I am going to be underleveled when I do, plus I will have next to no ammo, so good luck trying to fight my way through that entire ordeal. To that end, I do a little prep. I loot Victor's house for a repair kit and some ammo, then thanks to everything I procured from Doc Mitchell's house, I was able to trade them to Chet for even more cells. It's a start, but still not enough for me personally. The obvious thing is to rush the Van Graffs and relocate their stock to the toilet, then my pockets, but I'd rather save that until I got back from Zion, so I know that I'll have something to fall back on. Not to worry, as an infamous Tahiti enthusiast once said, I have a plan. First up, it requires us to go through the Black Mountain shortcut, so I begin heading for Sloan. On the way there, I find the always deceased Bright follower, and from him get yet more cells, a pistol, and a new outfit. I repair and fix the Snuffles for no reason other than I can, before passing through Hidden Valley, all the while avoiding the Bark Scorpions. Once by them, it's a straight shot around the rocks and up the shortcut until we arrive at the Repcon building, or as I like to call it today, Energy Cell Gold Mine. There's a couple of dead fiends around, so I loot them of their valuables, then after the robot has finished the tour, can grab the key to make my way up the building. At the top, we find the Brotherhood soldiers, who I also strip for their belongings. While hacking the computers, I level up and take my first perk, Light Touch. So long as I am wearing light armor, I will get plus 5% to my crit chance. That is the equivalent of 5 points of luck, FYI. After the hacking and looting, I come across the 3rd floor security card. With this, we can take a different path back down the stairs that lets us into the room with the matter modulator without the need for max science. We will be turning that into caps soon enough, but the real treasure here is the sheer abundance of microfusion cells. While they may not be the correct ammo type we need for the Compliance Regulator, by returning to the workbench at Goodsprings, I can use my high science skill to convert them into energy cells. Long story short, doing all of this, I now have 770 energy cells, plus an extra 100 bulk cells I got from Chet in case of an emergency. I'd like to hope that's more than enough, so it's time to make my way for the passage. Made a quick stop off beforehand to buy the Mark II reinforced combat helmet for the extra protection, as well as a set of leather armor. Would have preferred the reinforced set for the extra defense, but this will have to do for now. Arriving at the entrance, I speak with Lee Everett, and due to carrying Jack All, I don't have to worry about the weird 75-pound weight limit and can be on our way. One unskippable PowerPoint presentation later, and we are finally within reach of the run's namesake, and it only took 1,074 words to get here. The caravan is then attacked by the Whitelegs. Initially, I was concerned they'd turn me into a wind chime, but fortunately, they're distracted by the rest of my travelling companions, which allows me to skulk away across the bridge unharmed. The cave that holds the Regulator is right next to where we properly begin Honest Hearts, so it's easy enough to get to. Also helps that we temporarily have Follows Chalk here to dissuade any of the local wildlife should they come sniffing around. Before long, we arrive at our destination, Fallen Rock Cave. There are no enemies inside, just a bunch of landmines and shotgun traps. I could probably have sprinted through, but I choose to play it safe and disarm them all. Silver lining, I suppose, is that I can sell them all for a quick cap. The compliance regulator is just sitting behind a box with more cells, so I swipe the lot of them. It's not in the best condition, and currently does a whopping 4 damage per shot. At least landing a crit still does extra damage on top of the paralysis effect, the latter of which I get to see for the first time as I use Follows Chalk as a guinea pig. Needless to say, it looks to be pretty effective. Considering that if you land another crit on a target that is already paralysed, it resets the 10-second timer on the effect, then theoretically, I should never lose another one-on-one fight again. That is, of course, assuming I am lucky enough to land a crit and have enough ammo. Only time will tell, as for now I meet up with Josh. Yo, was that a Fallout 4 reference? After he assigns me an assortment of tasks, I ask him to repair my gear, and then see what he has to trade. Ignoring his hard-on for the 45, he does sell other stuff. Best of all for us is more energy cells. 474 to be exact. And I take them all.
1,431
shots. This time I've got
1,431
shots.
I make sure to dismiss Follows Chalk before setting out, just so I can see how effective it is when the lasers are permanently set to stun. A few scorpions are the first things I get to test it on, but they're weak enough that even the low damage from the Regulator is enough to kill them in a few shots. After arriving at my first objective, which is to simply fix a broken compass with 30 repair, I come across some geckos. I proc the effect on one of them, and the results are equal parts effective and hilarious. As I thought, once they are in this state, it becomes beyond trivial to finish them off. We shall see if I still feel that way when facing down multiple tough opponents. A few more geckos here and there before I finally find something that's a bit more challenging, that being the Whitelegs tribe. Something that somehow slipped my mind was that successful sneak attacks are always a guaranteed crit, meaning an attack while hidden would paralyze without fail. Well, as this one is all by his lonesome, we dispatch him with ease. I level up for doing so and grab the Travel Light perk. Doesn't necessarily help the build, but as I'm going to be wearing light armor anyway, I figured it couldn't hurt to get the extra 10% speed increase. I continue heading north to find the walkie-talkies for my next task when I run into, what else, but more Whitelegs. They make up like 90% of what you fight in Honest Hearts, so it can start to feel a tad repetitive. I have a small stroke of bad luck with getting the paralysis to kick in, so turns out the extra speed came in handy after all, as I could run faster than them now while moving backwards. Eventually it does work, and I knock out one of them, and then switch my focus to the other. Shortly after, he gets numbed, and I have just enough time to finish him off before his friend regains the use of his legs. Now that it's just the two of us, I win the fight no problem. Also get a small armor upgrade from them, as it's better than my standard leather. After this, I make it to the cabin, deal with more geckos, find the key, unlock the cabinet, and grab the walkie-talkies. All that leaves is finding some lunchboxes. I assure you, it's very important. Bumped into some cazadors on the way. Always makes you a little tense to be sure, but being able to stun them, even momentarily, certainly helps take the edge off. They recover remarkably fast though once it wears off, so I advise not standing too close to one, or else you're going to get stung regardless. Collecting the lunchboxes is straightforward enough, given that I can pass most of the checks, so after I stop a few bears from stealing some picnic baskets, can make it to Daniel's camp and hand over the goods. Like Big Josh before him, he too assigns me a small to-do list, which I get to right away. First up is Glory Cave, which I had to fact check before typing this part of the script, as I had referred to it as Glory Hole in my notes and was rightly confused. Just some of the giant spore plants from the base game in here. Stunning them is rather ineffective, given that they cannot move at the best of times. After de-weeding them, I can get to the cache, which is what we are here for, and bonus points for us is it contains a large heaping of energy cells and all sorts of other ammo types that we can turn into more energy cells. Second task is to either steal war totems or wipe out all the Whitelegs in the area. I am an overachiever, and so I do both. While they do outnumber me, I must have been blessed for the encounters, as I was hitting crits almost non-stop. I was able to stop multiple of them in their tracks at once and just swap between them to keep them out of the fight while I dealt with the weakest ones. Fighting the white legs is a lot easier than the majority of enemies you encounter, as they are mostly all melee oriented fighters, so even if they do get up, I've got a lot of time before they can even close the gap to fight back. The penultimate quest before the final assault is to head into a cave and plant explosive charges, and I was able to do so by sneaking in past all of the bears without ever being spotted. And with that, it was time to decide with bandages and see about getting me back to the Mojave. Not much to say, it's more of the same, just a lot more white legs to deal with. To make things easier, you do have Graham to back you up throughout, and it's just a crying shame that he can't hit for shit. Thankfully, when we make it to the end and fight the white legs leader, Salt Upon Wounds, Josh finally picks up the slack and promptly shuts him down the very second I land a crit on him. We are then greeted to yet another sideshow, and before heading back, we get everybody's clothes as a reward. A little strange, but why not? This is good news though, as Joshua's outfit gives an extra 3% to crit chance, and Salt's helmet gives another 2. The armour will be worn until the end of the run, no doubt. The headpiece though, while good, there are better alternatives. In fact, now that I'm back to the dreaded desert, that's what I'm gonna get to right now. What we need is in Novac, so I head there backwards from the Repcon building. I take a minor detour when I get to the dry lake to do what else but eradicate the fire ants. They're far enough away that sneak attacks are guaranteed, stopping them in their tracks and allowing for follow-up shots to finish them off. Wiping them out gets me to level 9 and a nearly maxed out energy weapon skill. If you're curious, the Regulator, when in peak condition, now does 8 damage. While double of what it was before, it's still not exactly great, but we shall make do. Fought a couple of Vipers before getting into town, nothing too impressive, but I did notice a funny bug where if you crit someone while they are reloading, it lets them finish their animation like normal, but then as soon as it's over, the weapon slides right through their fingers and they fall over. At Novac, I rush up to see Boone and agree to help find who sold his wife into slavery, which is quickly accomplished by letting him reduce one of the locals' heads into tomato puree. For doing so, he gifts us a first recon beret, which gives us yet another +5 to crit chance. Sure, I'm gonna lose out on the added protection that Salt's helmet provided, but I feel like for this build, higher crit chance beats out everything, no matter what. By now, I was starting to run low on ammo, so it was off to the Van Graffs to both steal and buy everything that they had. After a trip to a workbench for some tinkering, I was back up to over 1,000 cells. What I really wanted now was to reach level 10, and as I was just on the cusp, I decided I could do so quickly by heading back to Goodsprings and helping cull the powder ganger situation. I decided to pass all the speech checks cause I could, and in doing so leveled up that way. At level 10 we pick up Finesse, this adds yet another 5% to our crit chance. We're at a stage now where I'm just about as likely to crit as I am to land a normal hit. With that in mind, try not to be too alarmed when I tell you the powder gangers promptly ate shit in the upcoming battle for the town. Now, there are a few other perks I could grind out the levels for to really push this crit chance even higher. Laser Commander at level 22 for instance is downright disgusting. 10% extra crit chance and a 15% damage boost with all laser weapons. Good lord. That said, it's not really needed. In fact, I can easily demonstrate for you just how unnecessary more crit chance really is. At just level 10, with the crit modifiers I've mentioned up until now, I was easily able to walk into Quarry Junction and slaughter every Deathclaw with ease without any of them ever laying a finger on me. Positioning here was important as I could stun one of them, blocking the others from getting close to me while I worked on paralysing them too, resulting in all of them just kind of laying around while I slowly, very slowly, chipped away at their health. Even the Mother and Alpha Deathclaws were no match for the overwhelming power of the Regulator. This whole thing took about 10 to 15 minutes and the use of exactly 935 cells, as well as a few laser pistols I had in my back pocket to keep the Regulator from disintegrating in my hands. A very long, drawn out and rather boring fight, seeing as it's mostly just me shooting at motionless creatures. But if you're at all curious what the whole thing looked like, there is a link in the description to the full encounter that will be put up on the second channel, you know, for those of you that are mildly curious. For my troubles, I am given 500 NCR dollars, as well as a gold star with the faction, bringing me up to the good noodle status in their eyes. As I'm in the area, I make my way to the top of Black Mountain, this time to deal with Tabitha and her cronies. I fight her alone in the broadcasting room, so no points for guessing how that went. I know I said there wasn't much point in grinding, but that doesn't mean I still don't want to mess around with the weapon for a bit, and should I complete some quests and gain some levels in the meantime, then that's just a nice bonus. Thanks to having the holotape from the Brotherhood patrol that I found at RepCon, I also introduced myself to the rest of the chapter down in Hidden Valley. I simply dealt with Dobson by non-lethally paralysing his radio with the Regulator. The reason for this was so I could trade with the Brotherhood. I think it's not insane for me to have thought they would be a good source of ammo, given they only use laser weapons after all. Turns out I was wrong. Knight Torres had absolutely zilch for me to work with. It wasn't an entirely pointless trip though, as I was able to rob them blind of some energy and microfusion cells. Once I left, I was a little directionless, but after a minute or so, I figured, since I just flexed on the Deathclaws, that it would be fun to do something similar to the Cazadors infesting the path near Good Springs and Red Rock Canyon. I kinda got what I wanted out of this. That is, if you consider obliterating someone's DNA with enough lasers to the point where they become a sentient spaghetti monster is a flex. For what it's worth, I do. This wasn't the only fun interaction with a creature on my way to the cans. Had a rough run-in with some Vipers, you know the ones. Typically they are pushovers, but one of them was just destroying me with explosive weapons. I can knock them out, but not before taking a fair few hits and having to use a good chunk of my stim packs. It's a little refreshing in an odd way, as it's the first real damage I've taken thus far. Once I picked through them and the last one left is the leader, I was getting ready to finish him off, but at that very moment a random Deathclaw sprinted in and decided to steal the kill. I was grateful, but I still had to put him down after despite the assist. I thought about just stunning and leaving him here, but let's not pretend like the second he got the use of his legs back, he wasn't going to skewer me from behind. Pressing on, I hunt some Bighorner and in doing so, hit level 12. This time I take the Fight the Power perk for, you guessed it, 5% more crit chance. Granted, this is only against people wearing NCR, Legion or Brotherhood faction armor. Not entirely useful just yet, but will no doubt be handy for the final sections of the game. I stop into the Can's armory to convert all the ammo I swiped from Hidden Valley, and was now back to over 1,000 cells again. I'm not really in Red Rock for any particular reason, like I wasn't planning on siding with the NCR again as I just did that last time, so I had no reason to interact with the Cans, but even still, here I am, zapping them all. Was a little tougher than I anticipated. Should have figured being in a small room with multiple people was a bad move, yet here we are. Taking cover in the kitchen and swapping between targets to keep most of them out of the fight for as long as possible helped to ease things up and secure the win. That said, outside, the rest of the Cans weren't best pleased to see me, and as a result, I suffered my first death. I was too focused trying to take them down one at a time, so switched back to how I tackled things in the Longhouse, and in doing so, managed to survive. Right after this, I made my way for Boulder City. This may seem like I'm on some sort of eradication of the Great Cans, and while that was not the goal, it's hard to argue against what is happening on screen right now. Truthfully, I was here to get Benny's lighter from Jessup, and as I was not putting any points into speech today, lacked any way to convince him to stand down that did not involve my hard-earned caps. I needed the lighter because that, combined with both Benny's cigarette I found in Good Springs along with my base speech of 15 thanks to taking Skilled at the beginning, allows me to convince Swank to send Benny up to his room for us to assassinate him. A sneak attack from the doorway spooks him, causing him to fall off his chair, and while he cradles himself on the ground, I finish him off with a few follow-ups. For the record, I could have easily just came in here guns blazing and dealt with the chairman, Benny, and everybody else without breaking a sweat. Case in point, I proceeded to walk on over to Gamora to do just that not 30 seconds later. Up to the lucky 38 and it's looking like a house run today, so after handing over the chip and sitting through the demonstration, he wants us to head on over to the fort to install the upgrade. Before that though, I needed some repairs. The gun I can deal with, as laser pistols are a dime a dozen if you know where to look. What I needed was someone to fix up Joshua's armor, as my previous run-ins with the Vipers, Cans and Omertas had done a number on it. There's only one man for the job, and that's Major Knight over at the Mojave outpost with his max repair skill. Nothing on the way poses a threat, but I did take the time out of my schedule to free Beagle and upgrade the town security system over in Prim. Full repairs for all my gear ain't exactly cheap, but let's not pretend like money is hard to come by in New Vegas. Wipe out any small band of raiders and sell their weapons, and you've already made bank. I do the rounds to get some more ammo, get accosted by Kowalski and Novak, stun, but don't kill him, and then begin my jog to the fort. Some geckos and ghouls try to slow me down, but are barely a footnote in the journey. At the fort, I speak with Tumor Terry and get sent to deal with whatever's below. The Protectron, who has been standing guard over the door for the last 200 years, gets immediately dismantled by the very first person to walk in. And then I just deactivated the alarm in the next room while I continue eating house by installing the upgrade at the end. I briefly thought about siding with Caesar, but in the end I figured it would be more fun to fight the Legate with the Regulator than Oliver. Besides, if I side with House, I technically get to fight them both anyway. I do still return to Caesar to get the XP for supposedly doing as he asked. I guess he's just too stupid to order one of his men to go open the doors to see if I really did blow it all up. Speaking of blowing things up, it's time to meet the boomers. George the Psycho gets dealt with as per usual, although he did make me feel a little bad when he curled up into the fetal position. I make it through the bombardment thanks to the invincible house, and once they stop trying to blast me, I offer my assistance. As I've been focusing a good amount on my repair and medicine skills, I can help with the solar panels and patients right away. I then deal with the exploding ant problem for Raquel. A little tricky as lasers cause them to explode, but if I was able to land a crit early enough, I could get some distance between the two of us so I could take them out safely without singeing my eyebrows off. Doing these 3 tasks is enough to progress to the raising of the bomber. I have a high enough endurance that I could easily manage to avoid drowning. That said, the rebreather gives us some extra protection, plus I think it looks really cool with our current look. I make my way for the bomber by going northeast from the 188 trading post, which brings me face to face with some lake lurks. Figured they would be easily put down, and while I was kind of right, I was not prepared for them to freak out more than the cazadors. Yeah, they can go all string bean like before, which is always fun to witness, but even when they didn't, simply hitting them with the paralyze effect always caused them to just start rapidly spinning. They wouldn't just fall over or stop like everything else. Like, I get that they prefer to be in the water, but I feel like they may be overacting just a little bit to having to be on land a while longer. Well, once I'm done with them, I get to the bomber, raise it, bully some more cazadors in the vicinity, and level up to 16. We now have access to Meltdown. This makes all enemies killed by an energy weapon explode on death. This could be extremely good for the build, because if I can stun multiple people close to each other, then I can easily set off the explosion to damage them all. Keep in mind that it chains, so if another enemy is killed by the initial Meltdown explosion, then they too will explode, and so on and so forth. Back on track, I return to Nellis to enlist their aid, then inform House of my success to gain air support, but my failure to recruit the local mobsters. That means my next task is to deal with the Brotherhood of Steel. While it would be a cakewalk to stroll in and blow the place sky high thanks to my maxed out science skill, I decided to make things more tedious on myself by instead choosing to wipe them out manually. You may notice I said tedious there and not difficult. Well, that's because, much like the death claws in the quarry from before, it really does not matter how strong an enemy is at this stage. So long as I play smart and make sure to cycle between targets to reset the effect, I don't have to worry about being outnumbered. This becomes a little less manageable when there are a ton of them rushing you at once, but as I showed off with the death claws, if you can funnel them down a choke point and stun the person in front, it turns them into a makeshift roadblock, allowing you to create a lot of distance. There is the matter of ammo, which is something I was concerned about for all of 2 seconds before I realised I'd be coming out of here net positive if I took the time to loot all of them. When I began, I had exactly 1,500 cells. By the time I was done and converted everything at one of their workbenches, I was up to 1934. Good year. No, it wasn't! Back to house, it was time to save the president. Thank goodness I wiped out those death claws, or the NCR wouldn't trust me enough. With my rep, I am allowed to carry my weapons freely and have access to all the normally restricted areas. It's a good thing too, as the rest of the troops are more interested in busting a move than performing guard duty. Once Kimball arrives, I head straight up to remove the bomb from his vertibird, followed by dealing with the Legion sniper posing as a ranger. And with that, the day was saved. Although...
Answers the clarion call.
Taking out Kimball has 2 effects. First of all, I feel the quest to protect him, obviously, and secondly, it works in the same way that killing Caesar does for the Legion. That being, even though I was not spotted, every single NCR soldier will now attack me on sight. Fortunately, I can avoid an untimely death by firing squad by swiping the NCR uniform off the Legion assassin and wearing that to make my escape. House is not best pleased with what went down. That said, the dialogue would imply that he is not yet aware that I was the one who pulled the trigger. He simply thinks I just failed to stop the Legion. Interesting. Well, all that leaves is the Dorito substation, which, again, I can safely make my way to and from with the use of this disguise. It was time for the final assault, and for once, I felt pretty good about my ammo situation, so instead, I opted to spend as much of my caps as possible on healing supplies. Figured I was going to need them for the Legate and his men, seeing as I'd have to contend with a lot of them, as I can't goad him into a duel. When it comes to crossing the dam, as the tortoise once said, slow and steady wins the race, but if all else fails, paralysed below the waist. When it came time to face Lanius, I popped every helpful drug I scrounged up, including some turbo that I took from the cans. Didn't do much in the grand scheme of things, but he was paralysed before he knew what hit him. what I should have done is stayed put and continued to blast him while crouched in the hopes that the rest of his troops wouldn't see me. I did not do that though, and before long I was being swarmed. At first it was easy to manage. After all, a majority of the Legion have melee weapons, and thanks to Travel Light, I could outpace all of them except the Legate himself. The real issue was the handful of them using carbines. I had to try and focus them, otherwise they would rip through my armor and health in seconds. Joshua said is good for the build of course, but defense-wise, especially when they break it, it's not great. There was a point where I got them in a pile and was briefly able to swap between them, keeping them all down. But between a mix of not keeping track of who was going to get up first and not landing crits on ones that I thought I did, it wasn't long before most of them were up chasing me again. Meltdown came into play around here as one of them was low on health. Good news! Turns out the paralyze effect can activate on the explosion from Meltdown. Bad news! Turns out the paralyze effect can activate on the explosion from Meltdown, and it can affect me as well. That's 10 full seconds of being the Legate's personal pinata. It's a good thing I always hotkey my stim packs, otherwise I would have been toast. I burned through an ungodly amount of them. This was also where my armor broke completely, so that's fun. Once I'm able to get back up, I start blasting to try and thin out the attackers as fast as I can. It works, and I'm able to create some distance by running to the top of the camp, then jumping off to the side. The Legate also reached his health threshold around here where he backs off and calls in more men, but to look at this in a positive light, he started hurling incendiary grenades near his own men, so that made my job a little easier. I made it a point to not only focus down the ones with the carbines, but also take them once they were dead, so that the others wouldn't use them instead. During all this chaos, I managed to accidentally incapacitate the Legate while he was charging at me due to a well-timed meltdown, so that was good. After this, I accidentally backed up too far and entered the lower part of the camp, which meant the super sledge and chainsaw reinforcements spawned into play. But being down here also gave me a really stupid idea. I led as many of them as I could into the Brahmin pen and then began shooting the Brahmin. This then led to Meltdown activating on their death and hurting or outright killing a good few of the remaining legionaries. By now, all that was left was Lanius and 2 veterans with carbines. The Legate himself wasn't all that, and again, most melee opponents haven't been throughout. So, after critting him a few more times, I switched my focus to the other 2 and just stayed with them until they were no more. When it was down to just me and him, I kinda just started toying with him as there was nothing he could do now. Very happy I didn't resort to the duel, as this would have been very anticlimactic. To finish him off, I let him get close to the gate so that the very millisecond I deliver the killing blow, the door explodes and Oliver comes rolling in. I chose violence and put as many shots as possible into his head and bats. This way, I was able to detonate him quickly and the resulting explosion took out most of the backup. Not that it was needed, as Houseness Securitrons tend to vaporize them all without much effort. I do a little ring around the rosy with Mr. House so that I can get out and look at the real fake Securitrons before finally speaking with him, finishing the game, accidentally breaking the endgame slideshow and proving yes, you can indeed beat Fallout New Vegas with only the compliance regulator. Always an interesting time when you find what you assume is going to be an unremarkable weapon and ends up turning into one of the strongest firearms you could have ever used. Obviously, it shines better as a secondary option to stun people and then switch over to your main weapon, but still, I was shocked by how competent it was, especially against larger groups. I figured dealing with those situations would have been more annoying. I've been working on a couple of videos at the time of this upload, so not entirely sure what will be going up next, although using the regulator reminded me so much of how stupid fun the Volendrung is in Oblivion that I may try and go back to that Daedric Artifacts run. Assuming the crashes I was running into are fixed, that is. Regardless, that's going to be the end of the challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like. If you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe. I'm trying to run these videos out fairly frequently. My name's Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.